So we covered licensed versus unlicensed assistants, 1099 versus W-2, hourly versus salary, the value of providing benefits, payroll services in your accountant, LLC, S-corps, and corporate entities. That's some serious ground we covered right there. I told someone you to ask your question to the whole group. So go ahead and ask it, because I saw it via email come in, and Owen and Camille have one. And I said, hey, can we bring this up in the group so you could all hear it? So let's hear it as a group.
Awesome. So right now we are in the process of looking for our first admin hire. And it's a big step for us. We're really excited. We've just been following the process in the hire book, just kind of like, fill the funnel. So we've had over 50 applicants so far. And we've got a lot of great leads and some really high SC candidates. And we're going to be meeting with them or doing a phone interview, just continue to go through the process. We're really close. We've got 3 candidates we like that are really strong candidates. The question we have is, we've never done a hire before. We don't know how employees work. We don't know what we would be liable for in California. And we don't know how to pay people. So basically, we kind of know what to do to get to the point of selecting the top admin choice. And then what? What's next? And how do we secure ourselves, make sure we're not exposed to liability in California and that kind of thing?
Before we answer, can I just clarify a couple things? Because I know that there's going to be I just want to make it relevant to everybody else. By the way, I shared the book he referenced. It's a book I wrote on how to hire administrative staff for real estate teams. And the link to it is over there if any of you wants to get it. It's a very long book. It really is. I also have you guys took the online course, right? You didn't read that book, did you?
We did the online course and the audio book.
Yeah. It's a long one. It's my hardest book to get through, without a doubt. So congratulations, you lived. It's a really hard topic to make exhilarating, and it's not exhilarating. So anyway, but it does sound like you know what you're doing. How many transactions did you close last year?
34.
34, so right on target. I always say hire an admin at 30. If not, you're going to pay for it at 40 transactions a year. So you're doing it right at the right time. 30 transactions. So if you want to know when to hire, it's very hard to keep growing your business. If you're closing 30 transactions a year, you'll stop lead generating and focus too much on servicing your business at 30. So that is really great that you see that and you are hiring. So that's why we have that hire book over there. I'll find the online course for you. Okay, and so what have you done so far by way of following the process? You said you followed the procedures, so you've looked for an SC candidate. I heard you say that.
Yeah, so I love the process. So we've posted it on Indeed and Facebook Marketplace and a few other online job boards. And so we were getting applicants, and then we were filtering through the resumes, and we chose the ones that seemed to have like relevant experience or could be a good fit. And then we sent them an email, and it said, please respond with your resume as a PDF, and within the body of the paragraph in the email, say why you're a good fit. And so it, make sure people are good at following instructions. And then we got a number of responses there. I think we had maybe 8 or 9 people reply there. And then we had about 8 people fill out the DISC assessment. And of those 8, there was 3 high SC candidates who seemed to be pretty well suited for the job. So we sent them an email saying, next step in our hiring process is to do a phone screening interview on Friday. So that's where we're at right now.
Good. Okay. Excellent. Following the process to a T. And you sent the DISC behavioral profile link out to everybody just to screen them. And that's a little different than a KPA. KPA is a little bit more in depth and thorough, and I'd probably do that once we get down to 2 or 3 here pretty soon. I'd probably KPA them too. Again, it's hard to KPA, 150 applicants, but it's easy to DISC 150 applicants to really whittle it down to a manageable group of SC candidates, which I really like that you've done that. And I didn't put the Keller personality assessment, the KPA, in the book only because there are people from other companies that buy the book. But since I've got a bunch of you here, I can tell you I would probably throw the KPA into the mix as well here on the tail end of the hiring process. Then you're going to use the phone screening interview worksheet to do a phone screening interview. And then we're going to get our remaining candidates, whoever's still alive, into an in-person interview, use the in-person interview worksheet, use the reference check worksheet, and ultimately make a hire. I like that. Thank you. Now you're saying, okay, when we bring this person on, what are the ramifications of hiring an employee and or an independent contractor in the state of California? Okay, so I'm going to make a quick disclosure here to everybody. I am a licensed attorney. A lot of you don't know that. I do not practice. I used to. So this is not legal advice. I was not a employment law attorney anyway. I was a real estate attorney back when I practiced. I have an inactive license, which means I could just reactivate it if I paid my dues and I could start using it. I don't know why I would. It was hell. So I do not want to be an attorney, but I am one. I've also, coached and consulted many people into hiring administrative staff members on their real estate teams, however. So I do feel pretty comfortable answering these questions. As a real estate coach, though, not as an attorney. There's your disclaimer, and it's recorded. So don't sue me later for malpractice. You have not paid me any retainer fee. So anyway, with that all being said, so technically what you are supposed to do is hire some, and then we also had the issue of licensed versus unlicensed, didn't we, right? Wasn't that another issue?
Yeah, we've received advice in both areas.
Okay.
And I think the biggest takeaway and what we kind of decided on is we want a licensed agent who is a really high SC who wants to be an assistant, not someone who's using this as a stepping stone to become a practicing salesperson.
I like that. Yeah, I think I concur with that too. I'm a fan of getting I don't necessarily need to hire a licensed assistant, but I like it when the assistant is willing to get a license. Does that make sense? In fact, I like to help them get it. If you have a real true SC behavior that's applying for an admin job, almost never do they want to move on and become an agent. It is very rare I've seen it. Now, if you have somebody out of behavior like an IS or something like that, oh yeah, all day long, they totally will. But the problem is not that they want to move on. It's you hired an IS. The behavioral profile for an admin assistant is very clear and very absolute. There's not a lot of wiggle room in that one. It's an SC behavior. It's not a CS. It's not an SI. It's not an SCI. It's an SC. That one's real simple. And there is very few people that disagree with that one. Does that make sense? So that one's real simple. It's pretty concrete. And that's one of the main reasons why we want someone who's going to like the job and not want to get into sales. That's because unless you want to keep hiring people and be a stepping stone, that SC typically likes, the S stands for steady. Okay. Stable, secure. They like a secure, steady, stable paycheck every 2 weeks. The idea of going into the commission game when they don't know how long it is in between paychecks is a house of horrors to them. They also don't like putting themselves out there. They tend to be shy. Another S. I love S's because all these words do relate to them. And you can actually use S words. And so what happens is they tend to be more shy. They're not gregarious. They're not outgoing. Lead generation really isn't why they signed up for this real estate gig. Make sense? So they generally will stay put. And especially if you can help them get their license, like maybe pay for some of it or, some of the schooling or something and give them some time to take the test, then they become very appreciative. They become very loyal because they're one of the most loyal. They are the loyalist behavior out there. They really are like this clownfish in the sea anemone, they really are codependent. They want to latch on to you, if that makes sense. And if you let them and you do things like that for them, they will appreciate it forever. They want a partner. They don't want to go it alone. So I like obviously in a perfect world, you hire somebody that's experienced in real estate that has a license already, but that's very rare. It happens, but it's extremely rare to find that. Most really good seasoned assistants, they aren't looking for jobs. People hang on to them like a golden goose. You don't see golden goose running around the street because if someone gets a golden goose, they lock it up in a room and they feed it well and treat it well. So you won't see a lot of really good, talented assistants running around. If there's an experienced real estate assistant running around, be sure there's not a reason for it. Give them the disc. You know what I mean? You might start to see, oh, that's an IS or that's an ID. Oh, well, yeah, there's somebody who wants steady paycheck that is not a behavioral fit and they make a lot of waves and they're not steady and stable. Emotional roller coaster. You'll see those all over the place. They're admins that are running around always looking for jobs. Makes sense? Now, you will see people with licenses that are SC behaviors in real estate sales. You'll see it. They have, not to say SCs don't kill it in real estate. They do. I know lots of examples of SC behaviors that have been very successful. That can happen. But there's also many that get into real estate and start to realize, wait a minute, I didn't know that real estate lead generation was such a big part of this. I didn't know that this was, I've been watching HGTV and I love houses and I think they're wonderful to show to people. I didn't know how hard it was to get clients though. I didn't know I had to pick up the phone and I had to put myself out there. So, maybe this isn't for me. Those types of people are really good candidates because they have a license, they have a little bit of real estate experience, probably attended a lot of classes, so they can come and help you out right away. But I would say 75% of the time, you're not going to get that. You're going to get someone who's new to real estate. You got to bring them in and train them and get them a license eventually. They don't need a license. Like if they don't ever get a license, it's not the end of the world, but it sure is nice to have them licensed. Now they can cover for you and show a property really quick, use a lockbox, open a door, let an inspector in or a contractor in. Don't have to worry about what they say over the phone to potential people about listings. So I like having the license because you just got one more hand on deck, makes your bench a little deeper, give you a little bit more lifestyle. That makes sense. Does that cover the licensing issue?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, Brian, our biggest question is how do you pay someone and how do you not, do something incorrect in the hiring process that would warrant liability with the state of California? If they're licensed, do they sign on with our brokerage and we're 1099? Or, we just don't even know how to actually pay someone when we do find the right fit.
Okay, I will say this. As it relates to the state of California, believe it or not, this is pretty much the same everywhere. It's kind of weird because I know you're in California. I'm in California, and we always think of California as being weird, which we totally are. We're totally weird. But in this case, we're really not. This is pretty normal throughout most states. There isn't a lot of difference here. In fact, a lot of this is like, federal law, which is not state law, believe it or not. Some of it does apply to the state, some of it's federal, just depending on how far we go in and out of the salaries and whatnot. But I'll tell you this. First, let's talk about 1099 independent contractor versus W-2 employee. That's one of your considerations, right? And then we can also talk about paying them hourly versus salary, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm making a note here so I don't forget about any of these things. First of all, does anybody else have anything? I just completely dominated that conversation. I get excited. I've had a lot of caffeine today. Anybody else have anything to say about licensed versus unlicensed that I just kind of rolled over anybody? I know not everybody's at a point where they're selling this much where they need to hire someone, but I would assume this would be useful to you at some point because everybody's trying to get to this point. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of heads nod.
I've got a comment to say, which it might be a stepping stone to where Owen and Camille are at. Because my volume is in the low 30s. And it's interesting, I actually terminated an employee and had my volume go up. So it does have to be a really good fit. Because if they veer to the left, obviously it could kind of slow you down. You're trying to rein them in a bit. So what I ended up doing, which got my volume to more than double to the low 30s as far as sides, is I cut a deal with my transaction coordinator. And so I increased her income to $400 a deal or a side. And so she preps a lot of the paperwork, the listing paperwork for me, and just handles a lot of that. And if I need her help dealing with occasional lease, she'll deal with it. And here's the other big benefit. My wife and I want to store away a lot of retirement cash. And together, because it's just my wife and I in our corporation, we're putting $90,000 away in retirement. But I know, and I'm not a CPA, but I do know it's different when you have an employee. Now you have to kind of, in some of these cases, make it available to the employee to receive retirement benefits also. But anyhow, you can with certain types of employee sharing benefits. Yeah, like if you get a group 401k, but it's very easy to not set one of those up as well. But yes, agreed. I'll push back on one thing, and I think that's great, David. But if I were coaching you, I'd say ditch the $400 per transaction
And I would say, let's hire someone full time so that you can get to 50 and 60 transactions. That's what I would say. And I'm just being blatantly honest with you. The reason being is because when you hire a person that's a transaction coordinator by the file, they're great from listing to contract, definitely from contract to close. The problem is that's usually where their job starts and stops. And that's usually about 20% of what you need them for. If you can bring somebody on full-time, 40 hours a week, now we've got a marketing person too. Like we've got someone who can lead generate for you. Does that make sense? If it's a good hire, now your first hire may not have been the right hire. It sounds like it wasn't. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying if you get someone good, it's somebody out there that's helping you on offense, not just defense. So they're out there, working your SOI, running your client events, driving up your Google LSA reviews. They're out there, setting up your website, helping convert and distribute leads for you. They could be running your team scoreboards. They're out there running and aggressively growing the team well outside the transaction, where a transaction coordinator is typically listing to contract to close. Does that make sense? It frees you up to lead generate, which you do, David. But I will say, if the goal is to significantly grow, you're going to burn through that transaction coordinator quite quickly. Does that make sense? So
that's a valid point.
Does that make sense? So it just depends on your goal, though. You know what I mean? And where you want to go with it. And I've seen that. I mean, I do say getting a licensed transaction coordinator is a great idea. It's much better than being a solo agent. And I'll say, well, then you can go to your licensed transaction coordinator. And then ultimately, if the goal is to be big time and to maintain life balance, typically you're going to go with a full-time admin because it ends up being a lot cheaper, if that makes sense, to pay for them that way. Because once you start getting up to, 50 and 60 transactions a year, it actually is cheaper to have a full-time admin than paying per file, if that makes sense. And if you bring on any buyer's agents of your own, add that to your own transaction count, you're there instantaneously, if that makes sense. Not to mention for client retention, they can do a lot more for those buyer's agents as well too, help them with their marketing, things like that. And that's typically why you'll see most of the larger teams making that transition from per file to either hourly or salary. And I'm gonna tell you why I believe in salary a lot more. But I will say there are many people on this call that like to pay per transaction. This is probably not David, but it might be, because it's just easier. Like you only have to pay when you make money. So it doesn't feel like that there's not much pressure around it. You don't have to crack that nut every 2 weeks and pay someone a paycheck. So it feels a lot easier to pay someone by the file. Make sense? Which I think is true when you're selling less than 40 transactions a year. Owen and Camille are there and ready to go past that quickly. And then it's going to be cheaper to bring someone on full time and have them start giving you a return, because I've heard this many a times. You should get a 3-to-1 return on investment from your admin. In other words, they should make you 3 times their salary. That's what should happen. They should not be an expense. They should be an investment in your business that gives you a 3-to-1 return if they're doing their full-time job. Now, I will tell you, very rarely do agents utilize them properly. Usually they just start using them like a transaction coordinator and the agent just keeps doing everything themselves. And that agent gets stuck, like so many agents do, below 40 transactions a year forever. It's amazing how many people get stuck right there. And here's why. I'll tell you why. Spring and summer. It's right upon you. All you guys that are solo agents that have a TC, get ready for the pain, because it's coming. It's springtime. Hooray! You don't get to enjoy it because you're going to be busy as heck this spring and summer. Because unfortunately in real estate, all your 30 and 40 transactions come at once. They come at the same time, spring and summer. They don't come nicely spread out throughout the year. They come right now. Harvest season. So the pain comes right now.
I'm going on vacation. I'm going to Hawaii in July.
There you go. Beat it.
Me too.
Aloha. I like it. Well, you'll see that this is going to be a unique time without some sort of leverage, right? Because it's going to be a very busy spring and summer. For most of you, it'll be the busiest one you've ever experienced.
Brian, this is Desiree. I have a question.
Hey, Des.
So when you hire the administrator, do you want to keep the TC and the administrator separate?
Generally speaking, you're hiring the administrator and, to replace the TC, generally speaking. But there are many teams, you get up there to 90 to 100 transactions a year. You have an administrator and they have an assistant that's a transaction coordinator that's paid for file. I've seen that. Or you have a virtual assistant or something like that, maybe TC type person to be an assistant to the admin. But generally speaking, if you go step by step, you're solo agent, then you hire the TC, then you hire the full-time admin. And that full-time admin is absolutely needed to bring on buyer's agents. If you try to bring on buyer's agents with a per file transaction coordinator, watch how your retention goes. It won't go well. It won't go well. Yeah, because what's going to happen is they're going to see, their buyer's agents are quickly going to see, hey, unless you're giving me a lot of leads, it better be a lot, because I can easily just hire one of these guys myself. I don't need you, team leader, to give me admin support. This TC is giving me admin support, and I could hire this TC on my own. It's a big mindset shift. Very hard to work with buyer's agents if you've got a per file journeyman transaction coordinator as your admin. Plus, you're not providing any marketing support to your buyer's agents through that person.
So Brian, how do you pay your assistant? What do you use? What tools do you use? CPA?
Money. Bitcoin. Just kidding. So with so no, good question. Okay. So I'm going to answer 1099 W-2. Thank you for letting me take a little jaunt around the block there. And we're going to talk hourly versus salary. But I will tell you, I prefer salary versus hourly. Let me write down payroll service too. I prefer salary versus hourly. Here's why. To me, salary comes from abundance. Hourly comes from scarcity. So people will say, I want to pay them hourly because I don't want to overpay them when they don't work that much. What if they only work 30 hours that week because they go to the doctor twice and, I'd rather them tracking their hours. Because remember, on salary, they get paid. Let's say I'm going to pay them $4,000 a month, just so it's a nice round number, $1,000 a week. That's going to be our example. I just made that number up. Do not take that to the bank. It's different depending on where you live, but I like it because it's round. So that would mean I'm going to pay them $2,000 every 2 weeks. Okay. So even if they don't work a lot, or they leave early, or they pick their kids up from school because they're sick or whatever, I'm still giving them a check for $2,000 every 2 weeks. People don't like that. I'd rather pay them by the hour because I don't want to overpay them. So they'll go hourly. Here's the problem with hourly. It comes from scarcity. You're going to hire lower talent with hourly. You're going to have a scarcity mindset where they have to turn in their hours every single week, which creates a little bit of a negative culture, right? They start to resent every break they take. What I would rather do is pay them salary. It'll lend itself to hiring more top talent. We don't have to track hours anymore. Now I can say, hey, I don't care when you work. I don't care how many hours you work. I just want you to keep up and get your work done. If you don't keep up and get your work done, we're going to have conversations. We're not going to have conversations about when you come and when you go and how much time you take off. We're going to have conversations about you not getting work done. In fact, if you get all your work done, I'm not going to care how much time you take off. I'm not going to care if you leave early. It's all about your performance. And if you do a good job, you're going to earn the right to get flexibility in your job. So if I'm having a problem with someone not working a lot on salary, we're going to have bigger problems. It's going to be like whether you keep your job or not. Make sense? That's why I don't mind salary, because I'm going to be watching. If they're not getting their job done, we're going to have a problem. I won't be overpaying for long. I'll tell you that right now. Does that make sense? So I'd rather extend the trust and the benefits of the job and the flexibility and just correct the real problem, which is, why aren't you working? Why aren't you doing the job? Why aren't you managing your time correctly? That kind of thing. That's my preference, but both will work. But to me, if you advertise a salary, you tend to get a little higher quality of person. If any of you have ever worked for a job, you always wanted to be salary. You didn't want to be hourly because you wanted that guaranteed paycheck. The SC wants the guaranteed secure paycheck every 2 weeks. So they much prefer the salaried gig. And you're in a competitive job market. You're going to provide a much better hiring environment that way.
I have another question, Brian.
You sure? Who's that?
Do you
Des?
do this? It's Desiree again.
Yeah, sure. You're just coming from different boxes on here, so you're from the training room. So yeah.
Over here.
Good. Okay. That's funny. I see you now. Okay, good.
Yeah,
I see you. You're also over here, but that's okay.
So do you suggest that you pay them directly, or do you set up like an LLC or an S Corp or?
Yeah, believe it or not, that's your corporate entity. I mean, whether you have an LLC, an S Corp, or you're a sole proprietor, that one I would say talk to your accountant and attorney. It doesn't really make a difference. But how you pay them, I would, most of you, if you've got an accountant, your accountant will handle your payroll, and they will work with a payroll services company like Paychex or ADP or something like that, and they'll handle it for you. I strongly recommend that. Strongly recommend getting an accountant that is a full service accountant that can handle your payroll, or at least work with a payroll company for you. Strongly recommend that. I cannot tell you how important that is if you're running a real estate team, to treat your accountant like a member of your team, to give them administrative access to all your online business bank accounts so they can run a P&L for you anytime you need it. They can help you with your quarterly estimated taxes and keep you up to date throughout the year on your taxes so that you can actually know in advance of how much money you need to spend to make it so your profitability is mitigated before the end of the year. So you don't find out how much you owe in taxes right now based on last year's performance, because you can't do much about that. It's too late. So if you just have an accountant that's a CPA that tells you how much you owe, that's no bueno. You need an accountant that's working with you throughout the year to prevent you from owing a lot in advance. And that person, in keeping up with you, will have this changed the world when online banking happened, and you could give administrative access to your accountant so he can go into your bank accounts. He can't make deposits or withdraw money. He just has administrative access so he can go in and look at your data and then export it and give you a profit and loss statement and determine how much you owe in taxes each quarter. That is a game changer. So do that.
And then you pay quarterly instead of...
Pay taxes quarterly in advance. That's when they're due.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, if you paid at the end of the year, you're actually technically paying late.
So Brian, if you go through your CPA who has a payroll service, do you need to do a W-2 for your admin or a 1099?
Okay, so that's the next question. The payroll thing is for W-2 employees.
Right, okay.
That is technically, again, disclosure, not attorney, check with your accountant, blah, blah, blah. But here you go. Technically, what you are hiring, in my opinion, is an employee that requires a W-2.
And that's because you have hours, right? Like you're required to show up between 8 and 5 in the office, and you can set that because they're an employee, not an independent contractor.
Correct. Yeah. The difference between an employee and an independent contractor, there's like 8 or 9, I can't remember, mitigating factors. One of which is the hours you require them to work. Do they wear a uniform? Do they have flexibility in their job? Can they work for other people? If the answer is no to all those or something, then it's an employee, right? And basically, if you're hiring this person as a full-time admin working for you, they're a freaking employee. Now, you can probably get away. I mean, I know people do it all the time with calling them 1099 independent contractors. But understand, I mean, again, you're just dropping how much you pay them. So you're going to get lower talent. They're going to say, oh, so I have to pay my own taxes on this. My taxes aren't going to be withdrawn. So if you tell me that I'm getting $4,000 a month, that really means I'm getting paid $2,500 a month. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to have to save my own money for taxes and pay that at the end of the year. And it's going to be even a higher tax rate because you're treating them as a sole proprietor of their own business. So it's not as attractive. Again, you're going to get lower talent if you try to cut that corner with a 1099. And again, it's a scarcity mindset. I just say go with the W-2, do it right, pay them, and have that. And yeah, on a 1099, you can pay them yourself. You can just cut them checks. You can still have your accountant pay them, but you wouldn't need to, get the payroll company and withhold taxes from it. Make sense? Mm-hmm. But again, technically, I'd go W-2. Technically, I'd go salary. I'd get it done by a payroll service. I'd do it the right way. Do people do it the other way all the time? And do they get away with it all the time?
Do you have to get any kind of insurance like workers' comp or some kind of benefits for the employee if you hire them with a W-2?
It will all be handled by your payroll company and your accountant. Yes, it'll all be withdrawn from the paycheck. Believe it or not, it's really simple. It's not complex.
But we would need to, but how would that affect us as employers? Because now we become the employers, they become the employees. So we have to hire, we have to get workers' comp insurance. We have to, I don't know, it depends how big the company is. They have to, or it's an option to provide benefits like.
You don't have to. I'm going there next. So yes,
Okay.
you will have to provide workers' comp for them. It's actually done through the state. It's withheld from your check, depending on what state you're all in that are watching this. But yes, and that's what, it's very simple and easy. It's handled through your payroll company. Okay, benefits is something different, but I am going there. Going there.
Got it.
It's much, don't let this start freaking you out. I can feel the spiral right now. Like this is where most people go because they don't want to do all this. So they start freaking out. I cannot tell you how shockingly easy it is. Again, don't do this if you're not selling more than 30 transactions a year, okay? And you don't want to grow. And if you do it, this is why I said use your accountant. Your accountant will do all this for you. And if your accountant won't, you've got the wrong accountant. You've got a CPA that just does your taxes at the end of the year. That's not what you need. You need an accountant that'll help you run your business, a full service accountant. He will handle all this for you. It'll take 5 minutes of your time. I'm not joking. It's that simple. It didn't used to be that way 5 years ago. So if you have knowledge from prior to 5 years ago, the world has changed since then. We have online access and administrative access to banks. These payroll companies are phenomenal, and accountants started managing it all themselves. No one does it themselves anymore. It has all become so easy. But that's the right way to do it, and it's simple, simple, simple.
Brian, just real quick question. Jesse Gomez,
Yes. Hey, Jesse.
County.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere close to that kind of production, and I still use the CPA and all the structure of having the LLC and paying through the LLC.
There you go.
I just do it more for a lot of reasons, as you pointed out. But I mean, I would still encourage someone to do the LLC and understand whether they're going to have a W-2 employee or the 1099. And the way I'm doing it is I am doing a 1099, and I have a TC and someone that handles my marketing separately. So I'm not having one handle both. But I'll definitely encourage someone that, I mean, it's not up to that kind of productions to still have something like this structure, because it'll save them in the long run in regards to the IRS.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even this year thank you, Jesse. What Jesse's talking about is an LLC, and typically realtors are either an LLC or an S Corp. You know, those are the two most popular. And it, depending, again, people watching from different states, certain individual states actually offer some corporate entities that you can use as well, too. But in the state of California, a lot of LLCs, a lot of S Corps, they're both pass-throughs. So, you know, you pay your taxes once either way. So, yeah, I think that's great. And there are some legal protections. And of course, there's some actual tax ramifications now. And even with the PPP loans, you know, it made it a lot easier to get PPP funding this last year if you had one of those corporate entities in place, as opposed to going at it like an independent contractor. All you had to have was an S Corp or an LLC, and you were getting PPP money because you were treating yourself as an employee, and you got PPP money to not fire yourself. Go figure. So the benefits keep on rolling for the people that do structure and don't cut corners. Kind of crazy there. I see a question. Do you recommend Intuit or ADP? The other one's Paychex. I would say those are the three big ones: Intuit, ADP, and Paychex. What I would do is talk to your accountant and go with who he's most comfortable with. I would not hire them yourself. Go through your accountant. I can't say it enough. Use your accountant and get an accountant that'll work with you throughout the year.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes,
Can you hear me, brother? Okay, yeah. I'm actually just looking into this. I'm not looking to hire anybody yet, but for the future, isn't it like if you're an S Corp or LLC, you can get like 50% tax write-off on your employees with like QBI or something like that?
I don't think you can get that much. The neat thing about me not being an accountant and having an accountant is I don't have to know answers to those questions, Alex. I usually run those right by my accountant. And then I forget the answers because I don't need to know because he's got it covered. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think I get a 50% deduction per employee for any of my employees. But I do know there's quite a few benefits nowadays. And in all likelihood, those benefits are starting to go up. With the current administration, at least in the United States, in all likelihood, employer benefits for having employees is likely to go up.
All right, thanks.
But I don't know the answer. I'm sorry. That I truly am not an accountant. Let me tell you about benefits real quick, because I know Angela asked this question, and I bet you Owen and Camille were going to ask it. I'm, again, a big believer in benefits. Now, you're talking to a guy who's cut every corner on the planet himself. I've tried 1099 instead of W-2. I've tried unlicensed instead of licensed. I've tried doing my own payroll. I've tried everything. I've tried coaching people who've done all of them, okay? And this is over a period of 30 years. So it's a long freaking time. So I don't just come to these opinions. I come to these opinions, just lightly. I come to them as a scorned man who's tired of the headaches. That's how I come to these opinions. I come to them because I've watched so many failures that I know this is the foolproof way to do it. So benefits. I'm a big fan of benefits. Here's why. You're hiring an SC behavior. Okay. So let's say you're going to hire that SC behavior, like I said, for $4,000 a month, $1,000 a week. And let's say there's 12 months in a year. I know the math doesn't work out perfectly, but that's 48,000. Okay. Actually, there's a couple extra weeks in there. So let's say 50,000. I just like round numbers. So let's say you're going to hire 50,000 is a lot, but let's say we're going to, for your first hire, but let's just use it as a round number, 50,000. So if I hire them for $50,000, let's don't use 50,000. Let's use something more normal. Let's say 35,000. Let's say we're hiring someone for 35,000. Okay. $35,000 I'm paying as an admin salary is one thing. And if I don't give benefits to them, okay, they might go take a job for someone who's paying $20,000 a year that gives them benefits. That's how freaking important benefits are to an SC behavior. It makes no sense. Benefits aren't that expensive, not anymore. For most people, you can get benefits for $300 to $500 a month. So don't believe the hype. For most people, you can get benefits for $300. You can get, I'm not talking about vision and dental. You don't need to do that. Just give them health insurance. And I'm talking $500 a month. They can have a couple kids. If you offer benefits, $500 a month, that's $6,000 a year. Big freaking deal. It's worth about $20,000 a year to them. Does that make sense? So benefits go a long way. If you're afraid of doing benefits, just reduce how much you're going to pay them $5,000 and give them benefits. Trust me, it's much better.
Is that also paid out through your payroll service?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Camille. Yes. Handled right through it's so easy. I can't tell you how easy that is. It's even easier if your accountant does it. Did I mention that? So much easier. You'll love it. So yes, it is totally paid through that. It is withheld from that. So you're giving the salary, paying for the benefits. It doesn't have to be though, Camille. You can totally pay it on the side too. You can do matching too. And then your payroll company will handle that where, you get, say it's $500 a month. So it's $6,000 a year and you'll pay half and they pay half. So you withhold their 50%.
Question, Brian. It's Desiree again.
Hey, Des from Port Ranch.
Hi. So I'm like, woo.
Yeah.
So you pay a salary, a lower salary, give them benefits. And are there any bonuses with that? Like any bonuses along the way?
I don't usually start with bonuses. I like to kind of save those for like down the road because, usually every year employees are like, I'm ready for, am I going to get a pay increase? Am I going to get a salary increase? In society today, people increase a little bump every year, at least a cost of living increase. So I usually save the bonus for one of those bumps. So I don't have to give a bump that year. I go, okay, I'm going to start bonusing you $100 per transaction this year. And that will be my bump for like next year or 2 years down the road. Because I don't think it goes a long way up front. You know what I mean? Like up front, again, they're an SC behavior. They're going to go for the place with the highest salary and benefits. If you say, I'm going to give you a bonus, you're going to think, well, that bonus is going to be a lot. I mean, you should take that into consideration. The problem is they're going to be, yeah, but it's not guaranteed. So I'm not taking it into consideration. So it doesn't give you a lot up front when they're deciding whether to take the job with you or somebody else. Benefits give you a lot of mileage. Benefits give you a ton of mileage. Because remember, I don't know why, it's something about the S behavior, secure, steady, stable. They will stay with a job that underpays them by $40,000 a year to get $6,000 a year worth of benefits. It blows my mind how people will stay in underpaid jobs just for the freaking benefits. Or they'll take jobs that are way less lucrative because of the benefits. And then when you try to say bonus, where you're like, hey, I sold 80 houses last year. I'll pay you $100 a file. That's 8,000 extra dollars you can add to the top. They'll say, yeah, but that's not guaranteed, right? What if the market collapses? What if I sold 80 houses? I mean, it's not going to collapse that much, you know? And they're looking at you like, yeah, it's not guaranteed though. I don't get it every 2 weeks. It's not my set paycheck. It just doesn't give you the mileage when you're hiring up front. That S wants it secure, stable, locked in. Again, I've come to these things as a man scorned through frustration. Like, it's blown my mind that they will not give that consideration. It blows my mind, you know, with bonuses. It blows my mind that the benefits are so important to them. It doesn't make mathematical sense at all, but it does. So now I just roll with it. Does that make sense to everybody? Camille, Owen, did I answer all your?
Yes, thank you
Thank
so
you, Brian.
much.
Thank you guys for bringing that up. I thought that would be a cool one rather than answer all that. And you can see how much that would have been by email. So why don't we throw this one out there so you can hear my opinions on all of this. So we covered licensed versus unlicensed assistants, 1099 versus W-2, hourly versus salary, the value of providing benefits, payroll services in your accountant, LLC, S corps, and corporate entities. That's some serious ground we covered right there. So I really appreciate you guys bearing with me so you guys can kind of see what goes into a full-blown administrative assistant and some of those hiring considerations. So thank you guys, Owen and Camille, for being the guinea pigs that did it. That's great.